So in this video, we're going to learn about parsing trees, which are a way of showing how sentences are built up out of their pieces, or discovering that in fact a string of symbols is not a sentence. So the first thing we need to do to understand a parsing tree is to introduce the notion of a main connective. And I'm going to give some examples and then the definition. So here's a chart. So we have the sentence negation P. What's the main connective? Just the negation. Why? Because that's what we add to the sentence P to get the sentence we're looking at. How about the sentence not P? Well, in that case, it's the leftmost negation. And why is that? Well, because to build the sentence negation P, we add that leftmost negation to something else, namely negation P. Okay? How about P arrow Q? What's the main connective? It's the arrow. Why? Well, because we add the arrow to P and Q to build that sentence we're looking at. On the fourth row, we have the sentence negation of P arrow Q. In that case, the main connective is the negation. Why? Well, because to build that sentence, we take P arrow Q with the parentheses and put the negation in front. And then the last sentence is parenthesis, negation P arrow Q, parenthesis, so that's if, not P, then Q. And in that case, the main connective is the arrow. Why is that? Well, because to build that sentence, we take the sentence negation P, and we take the sentence Q, and we add the arrow to them and put the parentheses around them. So what's the main connective of a sentence? It's the connective that's added last in building the sentence box. So it's a sentence that we add, it's the connective that we add to one or two other sentences. In the case, if the connective is a conditional, then it's what we added to two other sentences to build box. If it's a negation, it's what we added to one other sentence to build box, if box is a negation. So we can then say what grammatical ambiguity is. Grammatical ambiguity is when we look at a sentence, there's more than one symbol that could be the main connective. And our language isn't ambiguous, and that means that what that means is that each sentence has only one main connective. What that means also is when you remove the main connective and the parentheses if it's a conditional, you're left only with sentences. Which sentences? The ones that you built, the thing you started. So you have box, you remove its main connective, and you're left only with one sentence if it's a negation, or two sentences in the parentheses if it's a conditional. So, and the main connective tells you what type of sentence it is. If the main connective is a conditional, then it's a conditional sentence. If the main connective is a negation, then the sentence is a negation. Okay, so let's look at some main connectives in English. We're going to look at two sentences, but it's going to help in thinking about those sentences and to think about whether or not they're true, and we're going to consider whether or not they're true in a certain situation, namely this one, the one which I am in a really good mood, and so if I have a cookie, yeah, I'll be happy, but also I don't need a cookie to be happy, so I'll be happy if I don't have a cookie. So if I have a cookie, I'll be happy. If I don't have a cookie, I'll be happy because I'm in such a good mood. Okay, so we have the green sentence. If I don't have a cookie, I will be happy. That's true, right? Why is that? Well, because I'm in such a good mood, then I don't need a cookie to be happy. Good. Now we look at the sentence, it is not the case that if I have a cookie, I will be happy. That's false, right? The sentence, if I have a cookie, I will be happy, that's true, and so the negation of that is false. So depending upon the first one, in both of these sentences, we have a negation and a conditional, yeah? In the first one, the main connective, the sentence is a conditional, which means that the main connective is a conditional, and the negation is inside. It's part of the antecedent. The second one is a negation formed by adding it is not the case that to the conditional sentence, if I have a cookie, I'll be happy. So in that case, we have a negation sentence. Why is it a negation? Because its main connective is a negation. And these two sentences, one is true, one is false. If I don't have a cookie, I will be happy. True. It is not the case that if I have a cookie, I will be happy. False. So what symbol is the main connective, or what words are the main connective of a sentence, make a big difference to what the sentence means, as these two sentences show. They're the same in terms of their pieces. They're both built out of the same English sentences and the same English logical vocabulary, but that vocabulary is arranged in different ways. So we have one's a conditional, and that one turns out to be true. The other's a negation, and that turns out to be false in this situation. Could have been the other way around. So now that we have the notion of the main connective, we're going to see how we can build sentences and what it looks like when we build sentences, and then using the main connective, how we can reverse the process and take a sentence apart. So let's build a sentence. So we might start, in fact, we have to start with our atomic letters. And so we'll have, let's say, P and Q. Our conditional rule, the rule for building conditional, says, you got two sentences, good. You can put a parenthesis on one side, put one of them, put an arrow, put the other one, and then put another parenthesis. And when you do that, lo and behold, you have a sentence. Great. Also, we know that P, being an atomic sentence letter, is a sentence. And we know that if you put a negation on the front of a sentence, you get a new sentence. So negation P is a sentence. Good. Now, we also know that if you have two sentences, you can put an arrow between them, parentheses around them, and you get another sentence. And so we can do that with P arrow Q on the one hand and negation P on the other. And so there we have a new sentence. And that's what it looks like when we build a sentence. And this tree that we've now drawn, which has it's like an upside down tree, but the tree at the root, which is up in the air, is the thing we built. And when we look at that, we see, here's how it was built up out of its pieces. We started with P and Q, put them together. We took P, put a negation on it, then put those two things together into the big thing. So this tree displays how the whole thing was built. Okay. So, and this process can be repeated infinitely, so we could put an R on the front of the whole thing if we wanted to, right? So we call this a parsing tree. Why it's a tree? Well, because if you flipped it upside down, it would look like a tree. It's an upside down tree. You can think of it as roots if you want. We're going to call them trees. And it's parsing because it shows how the sentence was built up from its parts. Okay? Now, if you are given what is in fact a sentence, you can reverse this process. You can build the parsing tree to show how to take it apart to get to its pieces. So we can split this into two. We know that's a conditional because the arrow on the right is the main connective, and so it breaks into the two pieces, P or Q on the one hand, negation P on the other hand, and then the negation P just turns into a P. We take out the negation, we remove the main connective, and then we again remove the main connective and get P and Q. And so at each stage, to build the tree, what we have to do is find the main connective and take it out, because what we're showing is how was this one built from at any given stage, how is the one at that stage built from its particular parts. And we keep breaking the parts down, breaking them down, until we get to the atomic parts, the sentence letters. But along the way, say, let me find the main connective, and then what's left are the parts. And what we're trying to do is break it down by its grammatical parts when we do the parsing tree. And now we have the tree reconstructed, and we can see how it was built up from its parts at each stage. And so at each stage, right, the new symbol is the main connective. So with the P and the Q at the bottom, that arrow is new, that's the main connective. Or, the negation is new, that's the main connective. Or at the top, what's the new symbol? The arrow in the middle, that means that's the main connective. So our parsing method, breaking a sentence into its parts, step by step. So at each step, you find the main connective, and you break the sentence into its immediate parts. And you finish when you get to the sentence letters. You're not done until you get all the way down to the ultimate parts, and the ultimate parts are always sentence letters by themselves. And so that produces the sentences tree. So there's a parsing module, and in that module, what you're going to do is determine whether or not you're going to be given a string, so some symbols lined up, and there are three possibilities. It's well-formed, it's well-formed and in official notation, or it's in informal notation, or it's not a string. So you'll decide which of those is it, and then if it is either official or informal, you'll break it up into its parts. What if it's not well formed? Should you do the parsing tree for it? No, because you can't. A parsing tree shows how a sentence was built up according to the rules. If it's not a sentence, it wasn't built according to the rules, and so you can't build a tree that shows how it was built according to the rules, because it wasn't. Okay? So if it's official, it's a sentence, you can show how it was built. If it's informal, it's basically a sentence, you can show how it was built. If it's not a sentence, you can't show how it was built. Okay, so, and just to have some non-sentences to close this off, this is not a sentence. Why? A is not a sentence letter. This is not a sentence. Why? Well, because we don't have any rule that lets us put a parenthesis between two sentence letters. So the tree shows how a sentence was built according to the rules. a not well-formed string being not built according to the rules doesn't have a tree. And so those first two strings do not have trees because they're not sentences. So in the last two videos, we've basically covered 4 topics. We've covered our grammatical rules, which tell us when something is a sentence. If it's a sentence letter, if it's produced by putting a negation on the front of a sentence, if it's produced by putting an arrow between 2 sentences and parentheses around the outside, and in no other way. We learned those are all the official sentences. They're the informal sentences, which are official sentences, except if there are external parentheses, we took them off, and then they're not well formed, and that's any other string of symbols, all the others. The main connective of a sentence is what is added to other stuff, to other sentences to build that very sentence. And a parsing tree shows how a sentence is built up from its parts, which are in the end sentence letters, and along the way, the new symbols we add when we're building it up are the main connectives, and when we're taking it apart, what we're doing is finding the main connectives, removing them, and bringing down the pieces. So we'll see how we can do that breaking apart activity in the parsing module, and we'll learn about that in the next video.